The end happened in room 521. It wasn't the first end to occur in a hotel room, and it certainly won't be the last. But it was still quite an important end for everybody involved, so that's some small consolation, I suppose. She sat on the bed, where she would have remained alone had she and the bunny not discovered one another. She had named him Mr. Tinkles, and together they sat, still but for some casual nose-twitching, until the door swung open to reveal the gentleman, who, despite the warm weather, was carrying an umbrella. He hadn't knocked. He never knocked. It wouldn't even have occurred to him to knock. He drifted into the room, stopped short as he spied the girl, and then looked back to the number on the door. Yes, he had the correct room.
"Ah,"
he said.
"Balls,"
he said. Even after so many years, it was still worse when the recipient of his services turned out to be a child.
"You didn't swear,"
the girl said. The bunny simply peered at him, though its blank expression somehow seemed to reflect the girl's statement. The gentleman shrugged and gestured with the scythe, which everyone was far too polite to mention had been an umbrella a few moments before.
"Well, you would too."
She smiled at him.
No,
he said. He told her not to do that at him. Smiling only made things worse. She continued to smile. Mr. Tinkles twitched, which made things neither better nor worse. The gentleman sighed and surveyed the girl. Aside from being a little pale, she didn't look especially sickly. Death by anemia, maybe? An impending fatal hemorrhage, perhaps? Would she soon be decapitated after tripping on an unlaced shoe?
"Are you ill, little one?"
he asked as he peered at her. She told him she wasn't. Then she surveyed him.
"Are you?"
she said.
"Is he?"
she whispered to Tinkles. The girl shook her head.
"Mr. Tinkles says no."
She stared for a moment.
"He says you're just really old."
He told her that Mr. Tinkles was really rude. He looked at his wrist, where there wasn't really a watch, and muttered something about this taking much longer than usual. The girl frowned, looked to Tinkles, and then back to the gentleman.
"You've done this before?"
The gentleman smiled a little.
"Quite a few times, yes."
He stared at her, and began to ask if she knew.
"Do you want some tea?"
the girl said. The gentleman responded as though he hadn't quite heard correctly.
"They have complimentary tea here. It's not very good, but Mr. Tinkle says you should have tea when you're having a difficult day."
Mr. Tinkles twitched his nose in confirmation. Tea was, in fact, a very good idea. The gentleman declined with a wave of his scythe.
"I'm sorry,"
he said, unsure quite whether it was his place to apologize.
"It really never takes this long."
The girl looked down to the bunny, and then back to the gentleman.
"Well, Tinkle says he's ready when you are."
The gentleman frowned,
"Tinkles?"
and then his expression softened. He pointed to the bunny.
"Oh, it's Tinkles! Ha!"
The girl looked at him, then to Tinkles, and then back to him.
"Yes?"
she said.
It's Tinkles,
she said.
You see, I thought...
He pointed his scythe at the girl.
Because I don't usually do animals. That's someone else.
The girl simply stared. She silently noted that the gentleman looked like he'd had a very long day indeed. The gentleman approached Mr. Tinkles, gingerly patted it on its head, and then raised his scythe to just above the rabbit's neck.
No!
The girl started.
He says all you have to do is hold him.
Just hold him.
He placed his scythe on the ground.
Animals are definitely different to people.
He took the bunny from the girl. Mr. Tinkles looked at the gentleman. The gentleman looked at Mr. Tinkles. There was a meaningful twitching of a nose, and after a long moment,
"Oh,"
he said.
"Thank you, Mr. Tinkles,"
he said. He smiled, relieved, and so very exhausted. Mr. Tinkles fell gently to the floor, amid a rain of something that looked a lot like ash. The girl plucked her umbrella from the ground, trying to ignore the sight of Mr. Tinkles lapping at what remained of the gentleman's form. She looked at her wrist, where there really wasn't a watch.
Well, it's getting late. Better be cracking on.